stand by for action.
And welcome aboard, matey. Hoist the mainsail and let's get this cruise started. My name is Dave Milner. I am the unpleasant blind guy. All right, let's begin. Not going to spend a heck of a long time on the huge scandals surrounding this administration, regime, whatever the hell you want to call it. But I do want to address one thing involving the press and their reaction to the whole deal. We need to understand who the press are here. We need to understand that while it sounds like they're on the side of freedom and they're on the side of getting the truth out of this administration and maybe even punishing people responsible, they aren't. They're perfectly happy to make a big deal out of this now because it's well away from the time that they're going to need to hunker down and work for President Obama and the leftist agenda. So they're willing to get into the show business. Now, let's not trust them too much because there are two things involved when it comes to the leftist press. First, they're all about themselves. They're upset about the Department of Justice tapping the AP's phones because they don't want their sources to freeze up. They want their sources to talk to them so that they can get the big stories and so that they can get recognition. Remember, these are leftists. It really is all about them. Then there's the other thing that we have to remember. They want us to trust them. They want verisimilitude. They want to be able to say in 2014, which is not as far away as you might think, and certainly in 2016, hey, we covered all this scandal business and we asked the hard questions and we were hard-nosed and hardcore and all this kind of stuff, so you should believe everything we say now when we tell you to keep voting that lefty agenda, to make sure that the Senate stays in control of the Democrats and to turn that House over to the Democrats as well. And in 2016, they want to be able to say it so they can say, hey, we thoroughly questioned Hillary Clinton back in the day, back way back when all this stuff happened, and you know what? We did a good job. So now you should believe us when we say that whoever is running against her sucks and she rules and you should vote for her and you're evil and a racist and probably any other thing we can think of if you don't. This is about motivation for the press on two sides. Do not trust them. They cannot be trusted. They really can't help themselves. My prediction is that probably by Monday, I'm doing this show on a Thursday, probably by Monday, they're going to almost all be right back to completely carrying President Obama's water. So let's just keep that in mind and move on to that next thing. Now, the next story involves something that may or may not shock you. I don't know. But it involves a poll that I was told about by my friend, Buddy Brennan. And this poll took place in the United Kingdom. And it's very interesting and very indicative of where Western civilization is at this moment. This is a poll that stated, we should kill disabled children like we kill deformed lambs. All right, I'm just going to read out of this article that comes from the National Catholic Register. Okay, and remember, I'm going to post all these things online through UBG Contact, so you can pull them up and read them for yourself. All right. The British you might recall the British politician Colin Brewer, who last said that disabled children should be killed to save taxpayer money. You might recall that at the time he apologized and stepped down in disgrace, but you probably didn't know that he was reelected to his old seat this year, and he's at it again. This time he reportedly compared disabled children to deformed lambs that need to be culled. In an interview with none other than the Disability News Service, Counselor Brewer said that perhaps we should be treating disabled children like the runt of a litter of lambs, which are often disposed of by smashing them against a wall. If they have a misshapen lamb, they get rid of it, he said. They get rid of it. Bang. Bang. That's sound fiscal policy, huh? And that's what it is, according to Brewer. He said the disabled people are just too expensive to care for, so some may just have to go. We are just animals, Brewer continued. You can't have lambs running around with 5 legs and 2 heads. It would be put down, smashed against the wall, and be dealt with. I always love when people say humans are just animals, because the next sentence out of their mouths usually goes a long way toward proving it. When asked if there was any difference between killing a lamb or a human being, he simply said, according to the Disability News, I think the cost has got to be evaluated. It is not something I would like to do, but there is only so much in the bucket, he reportedly said. If you are talking about giving services to the community or services to the individual, the balance has got to be struck. All right. Balance? If anyone here seems imbalanced, it's those who voted for Brewer. I'd be interested in asking him and anyone who supported him, how much is the price tag of a human life? When carrying costs, what's the limit? Now you might just say that it's just one crazy old dude who cares. Of course, what he cares about, I don't know. But here's the thing. He was just reelected earlier this month to his old seat. That means that being pro-infanticide and culling the disabled is no longer a deal breaker in European politics. Sure, he may be eccentric, but he's just fighting to keep taxes down, right? Now, I'm going to finish reading the article right there. This is, by the way, by a gentleman named Matthew Archbold. And this was put on Tuesday the 14th. Fascinating stuff. Still don't have a lot of time. I'm not going to completely finish reading the article, but I think this speaks volumes to the culture of death that has grown up around the entire pro-abortion, anti-life culture, really, that has surfaced in the West, in Europe, and certainly in the United States as well. We can look at this and we can see how the left often goes to the population control method for taking care of the poor. Well, that's after they get in power. Before they get in power, they're all about making sure everyone has everything and it's all equal and the rich are evil and the wealth has to be redistributed. Once they're in office, however, that changes quite a bit. Then, suddenly, there's only so much in the bucket, and we have to distribute that quite well. So, let's move on to the next thing, bearing that in mind, and you might want to share that article with your pro-abortion friends and ask them if this is what they're into as well. Now, on to the next big thing. Yes. Now, this has to do with the immigration bill. Does anybody remember when Nancy Pelosi made the very famous statement that we have to pass the Obamacare bill before we can find out what is in it? I think we all do. And it's kind of that way with the amnesty bill. This one has a little cute little thing in it where there's going to be a biometric database of all adult Americans. That's the kind of thing that people can do in Congress. They can slip these little things in legislation and really make them very nasty things indeed. I'm going to read from this article, which is in Wired magazine. All right. Immigration reform measure the Senate began debating yesterday would create a national domestic database of virtually every adult in the U.S. in what privacy groups have fear could be the first step to a ubiquitous national identification system. Buried in the more than 800 pages of bipartisan legislation, is language mandating the creation of the innocuously named Photo Tool, a massive federal database administered by the Department of Homeland Security and containing names, ages, social security numbers, and photographs of everyone in the country with a driver's license or other state-issued photo ID. Employers would be obliged to look up every new hire in the database to verify that they match the photo. All right. So that's, and I'm going to post the rest of that. But let's just get into the implications of that, if you will. This is almost the mark of the beast. For those of you who read the Bible, you know what this is from the book of Revelations. Mark of the beast basically is something that people have, and without it, they cannot buy or sell. And in a way, the Obama administration is trying to make sure that this happens. Of course, I'm sure that President Obama never thought about this because, let's face it, I really think the only thing that President Obama himself believes in is his own coolness. Now, on this subject, I ran across a rather interesting video that was told about to me by Katie at Silver Spring, my friend who I mentioned last week. This is by a fella named Michael Voris, and he puts out these videos on YouTube called The Vortex. Very nice. Now, this one discussed immigration and the Catholic Church. I'm not a Catholic, but what this did do was it got me to thinking about the whole subject, which is always a danger, quite frankly, but I love it whenever something gets me to a place where I'm thinking about something else and it's helpful. And this time, I got to thinking about the issue of borders. A lot of people on the left don't like the idea of borders. They think that borders give rise to nationalism, which gives rise to conflict, which gives rise to wars, and they think everything would be all great if there were no borders and there was only one overreaching world government that controlled everything from one place, where a lot of very, very smart people sat in judgment on the entire planet. In fact, this is a very common theme in science fiction. But it got me to thinking about the whole immigration issue here in the United States and whether or not we want open borders, which is at its end really what this amounts to. So let's think about this. Open borders means, in a way, open cultural borders, because that's really what borders contain. they don't so much contain nations as cultures. They contain all of that encapsulated inwards. The culture of the United States of America is a little bit strange because we aren't a nation of immigrants. I hate to use that phrase, but it is true, and it's a good thing. We have a lot of freedoms and a lot of different cultural bases that we share the same country with, and we manage, thanks to our Constitution, to do it without blowing each other's brains out. Now, I rather like that, but let's face it, there are some cultural characteristics in other countries that, frankly, I don't like, and I think, frankly, most other Americans don't like. We don't like the fact that there is still slavery in the world. This is practiced in both Africa and in Asia. So we're not too hot about that. We don't like the fact that women and gays are not well treated in the Middle East. We don't like the fact that there are such things as honor killings in South America. There are some things that, frankly, I believe most Americans are really not into. And this is what happens when you open the borders. When you open the borders, you have to open the culture, because that's what the borders really contain. Not so much the nations, but the cultures. And we can even reverse this. I believe that in a lot of these countries on the continents that I've just talked about, they don't necessarily think that the freedoms and personal liberties that we have here in the United States of America are necessarily a good thing. They go against their religion or against other cultural mores, and they just don't want to deal with it. So, are open borders a good thing? I don't think so. I don't think they're a good thing for the United States of America, and I don't think they're a good thing for other countries either. I think that sovereignty is a good thing, and that among all the nations of the world, the United States of America is and can be and can remain the beacon for peace and freedom. Now, let's move on to the next thing. Now, I don't have this one queued up, so you may have to look for the story. But in essence, what it is that the United Nations, or one of its agencies, has decided that it's a good thing for people to eat bugs. They think this is a great way to cut down on pollution and wastage of other resources and all of this sort of thing. I think what we need to remember here, folks, is that the United Nations is just a new and different world aristocracy. Now, I'm guessing that most of them aren't going to want to be eating bugs. I'm guessing most of them are going to be chowing down on big, yummy steaks, nice salads, patty de foie gras, and all of those other fancy foods that the rich people oh so love to have at the cocktail parties. And by the way, the kind of foods that almost none of us will probably ever even see. So let's remember that the United Nations is being run by these sorts of snobs. And while they're telling us to eat bugs, they're going to be munching down on the steaks. They're not going to be doing a thing themselves personally to be conserving anything, and yet they want to impose their rules and regulations on us. If you don't believe me, take a look at the United Nations website and read about Agenda 21, and then go and change your underwear, because you're probably going to have pooped. Okay, last story is one that I think has really become popular. It's one of my Americans Are Awesome stories, but this one happens to be about a foreigner. Now, the reason that I'm doing it this way is because this particular foreigner has visited some of our most awesome Americans that there possibly are, and that is our wounded warriors. This comes from an article, believe it or not, out of BuzzFeed. Yeah, that right-wing conspiracy nut job paper, BuzzFeed. Ooh. Now, it talks about Prince Harry visiting the wounded U.S. veterans. Now, I'm really not big on royals, guys. Gotta say it. They interest me on a sociological level, but other than that, my view of them is that we fought 2 wars to get away from them. And frankly, I don't really care what this prince or that princess or whatever is doing. It just really does not consume my day at all. But there's always an exception that proves a rule, and this is one of them. Now, Prince Harry, unless I'm mistaken, and if I am, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, served in the Royal Marines over in Afghanistan. And until an American reporter blew his cover, he was out there in the thick of it. So he was actually real when it came to military service. What makes him kind of cool. Of course, a lot of people know about him because of some incident the last time when he was in the United States, and he was in Las Vegas, and there were pictures taken of him and some naked chick or something like that. I mean, I don't know what they expected him to be doing in Las Vegas, other than being with a naked chick, but that's just me. I guess I'm naive. Anyway, this time he definitely deserves a mention because he came and visited our wounded warriors. I'm just going to read a little bit of this that's out of BuzzFeed. It says Captain Harry Wales, that's Prince Harry's real name, visited soldiers wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan after honoring America's fallen soldiers at Arlington National Cemetery. As you can see, I will never get a job narrating talking books. Okay? They've got some really good pictures of Prince Harry here. And let's see. We've got one here that's a picture of him arriving at Walter Reed. That's where he was, Walter Reed Medical Center. And he visited our wounded warriors there. The British Army captain exchanged handshakes and stories with soldiers receiving physical therapy at the Military Rehabilitation Center. And there's another picture here. Prince Harry greets wounded soldiers at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. Okay. And another picture. Prince Harry is just one of the guys, one soldier wrote on Instagram. And that really does kind of seem to be true. The impression I got of Prince Harry was that he was extremely dissatisfied, to put it mildly, when that American reporter blew his cover and he had to leave Afghanistan. He was not happy at all. And I've seen this in the past when you have male royals who serve in the military. They're people who serve with them usually say, oh yeah, he was just one of the fellas, But apparently this was pretty true about Prince Harry. All right, now here's another caption. See, he happily posed for pictures and swapped war stories with his fellow veterans. All right, we've got that one. And let's see, officials at Walter Reed showed the prince a high-tech treadmill that projects a virtual world on a screen and is used to help patients who have lost limbs with posture, balance, and pain. All right, so he got to see some of our goodies there that help our wounded warriors. We've got nothing like this back in the UK, he said. You guys, as Americans, are used to the technology. We are always behind. And this next caption. He chatted with Staff Sergeant Tim Payne, age 30, of Montana, who was injured by an IED in Afghanistan. Next one. We talked about how I got injured and that I like swimming, Payne said after the chat, I guess. I told him I swam 4,000 meters a day and someday we'll swim the English Channel. Harry said, that's a crazy idea. I actually like that. So I'm actually reading this for the first time. Mostly I've just heard about this visit on various radio shows and whatnot. Although a prince although a prince, Harry is also an operational soldier. Indeed, he's a soldier's soldier, said Royal Press Secretary Jamie Lowther Pinkerton. Yeesh. Okay, how I got through that name, I don't know. Right. The recurring theme of this trip is to help recognize and bring a spotlight on the work being done to help these outstanding young men and women. This apparently is what Prince Harry has said. And yes, it is true. All of the male royals are active serving military as long as they live. That, I believe, is the rule. So, generally speaking, I like to always make my awesome American story about an American. But in this case, I kind of think the audience can forgive me because this particular story showed that not only are our wounded warriors awesome to us, they're awesome to their fellow warriors around the world. And I think I am usually skeptical about visits like this because I know that sometimes these people need something to make them look good or sound good because they've messed up in the past, which the palace, I believe, sort of thought that Harry did when he was in Las Vegas. Frankly, I don't care. If our wounded warriors got a boost out of it, then I get a boost out of it. And I appreciate Prince Harry's visit and that he visited with some of our most awesome Americans, because it's those guys that make sure that we have all the freedoms we do. And I thank them with everything that I am. They are fantastic. Okay. Said I was going to talk to the people on Twitter a little bit, answer things that they had to say on Twitter, and I want to do that. I happened to cross something that 30 in California had to say, and I want to read a couple of her tweets, or his tweets. See, 30 in California sent me two. Let's see, enjoyed the show on May 9th. I must disagree on the topic of the man who can't work with women. Now, they expanded on that in another one. If he can't restrain his lust, how can we trust him to not succumb to other sins like greed or wrath? His sort shouldn't be in office. All right, well, that's a fair point. I think it's a fair point. I mean, certainly I felt that way about, Slick Willie Clinton when he was in office. And by the way, who she's talking about is Ernest Hewitt, a guy who I covered in a recent Unpleasant Blind Guy, who does not hire female interns because he says that he might harass them. Now, what I really want to say about this is that, yes, ideally, this guy probably shouldn't be in office. But at least, and I don't approve of his way of handling things either. I mean, if he can't keep his hands to himself, then he does need some sort of professional help, I think. But hey, at least he's being honest, and wonky and imperfect as it is, he has found some sort of a workaround. It's not perfect, and certainly I wouldn't vote for the guy. But it is appropriate, I think, to recognize it as rather unusual, and that's why it kind of caught my eye, because it is unusual. Most politicians just cover something like that up and go on abusing. At least this guy found a workaround, even if it is bloody imperfect. So I want to thank you, 30 in California, for those tweets and for listening to the show, certainly. And that's going to do it this time. I want to shout out to RW on Twitter for that extra support, and to everyone who listens to this program, I want to say thank you again. That's it for this week. There'll be another one next week, hopefully. Thank you, and may your God go with you. Bye-bye.